The smell of soy sauce and sesame oil had become my second skin. After 6 years of working at Hanul Garden, I could identify every dish in the kitchen blindfolded. The sizzle of bulgogi on the grill is familiar as my own heartbeat. My grandmother used to say that when you work somewhere long enough, the place starts working you. And she wasn't wrong. The scent of gochujang had seeped into my hair, my clothes, the creases of my hands where I'd scrubbed them raw each night before going home. I adjusted the cloth belt of my uniform, the traditional handbook-inspired design that made me look like I belonged in a Korean drama, rather than a cramped Los Angeles restaurant where the air conditioning barely worked, and the owner, Mr. Kim, paid me just enough to keep the lights on in my studio apartment. The fabric pulled tight across my stomach, and I felt that familiar flutter, the reminder of the secret I'd been carrying for 3 months now. Nobody knew. Not my coworker Maria, who'd become something close to a friend. Not my mother, who called from Atlanta every Sunday to ask when I'd stop wasting my life serving other people's food. And definitely not the father, who didn't even know I existed anymore. My feet ached in a way that had become constant, the kind of deep bone-tired pain that no amount of soaking could fix. I'd been on my feet since the lunch shift started at 11, and now, at 7 in the evening, the dinner rush was just beginning to build. Through the kitchen service window, I could see the dining room filling with the usual mix of Korean families, young couples on dates, and the occasional food blogger who'd heard about Mr. Kim's legendary galbi. The restaurant sat in the heart of Koreatown, squeezed between a karaoke bar and a beauty supply store, its neon sign flickering in that perpetual state of almost broken that Mr. Kim never seemed to have the money to fix. Inside, the decor was stuck somewhere between traditional and trying too hard, with paper lanterns hanging from the ceiling and Korean landscape paintings on walls that desperately needed repainting. The wooden floors creaked with every step, and the tables wobbled unless you folded a napkin just right under one leg. But the food was good. Better than good. Mr. Kim's recipes came from his grandmother in Busan, and there was something in the way he marinated the meat, in the balance of sweetness and heat in his sauces, that kept customers coming back. That kept me employed despite the minimum wage, and Mr. Kim's tendency to forget to include tips in our paychecks. Jasmine! Maria's voice cut through my thoughts, urgent and higher than usual. Table 8, VIP, move. I turned to find her at the service window, her usually calm expression replaced by something that looked like nervousness. Maria had worked here for 10 years, longer than anyone except Mr. Kim himself, and I'd never seen her rattled. What's wrong? I asked, moving toward her. Just go. Private room. They're already asking for service. She wouldn't meet my eyes, her hands busy rearranging clean dishes that didn't need rearranging. Private room meant big spenders. The kind who ordered bottles of soju like they were water and left tips that could cover a week's groceries. Private room also meant Mr. Kim watching every move, making sure his best service went to the customers who could afford his worst prices. I smoothed down my apron, grabbed a tray, and pushed through the door that led to the back hallway where our 3 private dining rooms were located. The hallway was dimmer than the main dining area, lit by wall sconces that cast more shadow than light. My footsteps were muffled by the carpet runner, worn thin in the center from years of servers making this exact walk. Room 8 was at the end, its sliding door closed. I could hear voices inside, speaking rapid Korean that I'd learned to recognize but not understand, despite 6 years of working here. My hand hesitated on the door handle. Something felt off. The energy was wrong. The voices too sharp, too urgent. But I'd learned early in this job that hesitation meant trouble. Mr. Kim didn't tolerate servers who made customers wait, who questioned assignments, who did anything except smile and serve and disappear. I slid the door open. The scene inside registered in fragments, my brain trying to make sense of what I was seeing. 5 men sat around the low table, their expensive suits incongruous with the casual restaurant setting. No menus, no food, just an array of shot glasses, and a bottle of clear liquid that definitely wasn't the soju we served. And in the center of it all, a man who made my breath catch for reasons I couldn't immediately name. He was beautiful, in that sharp, dangerous way that made smart women cross the street. Early 30s, Korean, with a face that could have belonged to one of those actors in the dramas my grandmother used to watch. His black hair was styled back from his face, showing sharp cheekbones and a jawline that looked like it had been carved with deliberate precision. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, the fabric so fine it seemed to absorb the light. His white shirt was crisp despite the late hour, and a watch glinted at his wrist, the kind with complications I couldn't begin to understand, and a price tag I didn't want to imagine. But it was his eyes that held me frozen in the doorway. Dark, intense, calculating. They swept over me with the same precision someone might use to assess a potential investment, weighing value and risk in a single glance. Finally, one of the other men said in English, his accent thick, "We need water. And glasses. Clean ones." I nodded, managed to step into the room, my hands already reaching for the empty glasses on the table. That's when I noticed the sweat on the beautiful man's forehead. The way his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his phone. The pallor beneath his naturally tan skin. "Are you feeling well?" The question escaped before I could stop it, breaking Mr. Kim's cardinal rule. Serve but don't speak unless spoken to. The man's eyes snapped to mine, and I saw something flash through them. Surprise, maybe. Or calculation. His lips parted as if to respond. Then his hand went to his throat. "Water," he managed, his voice hoarse. "I need water now." I moved without thinking. Years of watching my grandmother treat sick neighbors overriding any sense of self-preservation. I grabbed the water pitcher from my tray and poured, my hands steady despite the growing alarm in my chest. He drank deeply, desperately, water spilling from the corners of his mouth and staining his expensive shirt. His companions watched with expressions ranging from concern to something darker, something that made the hair on the back of my neck rise. When he lowered the glass, his breathing was labored. His pupils were dilated, and a sheen of sweat now covered his face. I'd seen this before, in my grandmother's cramped Atlanta kitchen, when Mr. Henderson from next door had come stumbling in after eating something that didn't agree with him. "What did you drink?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "The soju," one of the men answered, gesturing to the bottle on the table. I picked it up, uncapped it, sniffed. The smell was wrong. Beneath the clean scent of alcohol was something bitter, something chemical that made my eyes water. "This isn't soju," I said flatly, "and he's been poisoned." The room exploded into Korean, the men talking over each other, their voices rising. But the beautiful man just stared at me, his dark eyes boring into mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Help me," he said, and despite the chaos around us, I heard him clearly. "Please, help me." There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room who mattered, that made my decision. I set down the pitcher and pulled out my phone. "I'm calling an ambulance," I said. His hand shot out, faster than someone in his condition should have been able to move, and closed around my wrist. His grip was weak but insistent. "No hospitals," he managed. "Too dangerous. You help me. You save me." "I'm a waitress," I protested, even as my mind was already cataloging symptoms, running through the herbal remedies my grandmother had drilled into my head. "You need a doctor. You're more than a waitress." His eyes held mine. "I can see it. You know what to do. Please." And God help me, I did know. My grandmother had been what people back home called a root woman, someone who understood plants and healing in ways that modern medicine had forgotten. She'd spent years teaching me, making me memorize remedies, forcing me to help her treat neighbors who couldn't afford doctors. I looked at the man's face, at the desperation there, at the way his companions were already pulling out their phones, already arguing about next steps in rapid Korean, and I made a choice that would change everything. "Fine," I said, "but I need supplies, and everyone else needs to leave. Now." The men protested, but the beautiful man raised his hand, and they fell silent. He spoke in Korean, his voice weak but commanding, and one by one, they filed out of the room. Until it was just me and him, a stranger who'd put his life in my hands, and the knowledge that I'd just stepped into something far more dangerous than a simple case of food poisoning. His hand was still around my wrist, his pulse rapid and thready against my skin. "What's your name?" he asked. "Jasmine," I heard myself say. "Jasmine Carter." "Minjun," he replied. "Minjun Park, and Jasmine Carter. I'm going to owe you my life." The weight of those words settled over me like a prophecy, and somewhere in the back of my mind, my grandmother's voice whispered a warning I should have heeded. "Be careful who you save, child. Sometimes the debt of a life is more burden than blessing." But I was already moving, already cataloging what I'd need, already committed to saving a man whose name I barely knew, and whose world I couldn't begin to understand. Minjun's breathing had turned shallow and rapid, each inhale a struggle that made his chest rise and fall with alarming irregularity. I needed to move fast, but my mind was working through the problem with the same methodical approach my grandmother had drilled into me since childhood. Poisoning wasn't just about counteracting the toxin. It was about supporting the body's natural defenses, buying time for it to fight back. "I'll be right back," I told him, my voice steadier than I felt. "Don't move. Try to stay conscious." His fingers tightened around my wrist for a moment before releasing. "Hurry," he managed. I pushed through the door and nearly collided with Maria in the hallway. Her dark eyes were wide with fear, and she grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "Jasmine, what's happening in there? Mr. Kim is freaking out. He's saying those men are dangerous, that we should call the police." "No police," I said firmly, echoing Minjun's words. "He's sick, that's all. I'm handling it." "You're a waitress, not a doctor," Maria hissed, but there was worry in her voice, the kind that came from working together long enough to care. "My grandmother was a healer," I said, already moving past her toward the kitchen. "I know what I'm doing." The kitchen was its usual controlled chaos, Mr. Kim barking orders in Korean to the line cooks, steam rising from pots, the sharp sound of knives on cutting boards. I went straight to the small room off the main kitchen where we kept dry goods and supplies. My hands worked quickly, grabbing what I needed. Activated charcoal that Mr. Kim kept for filtering water, ginger root from the produce section, honey, and salt. Not exactly a pharmacy, but it would have to do. I also grabbed a clean mixing bowl and several bottles of water. When I turned around, Mr. Kim was blocking the doorway, his round face red with anger and stress. "Jasmine, what are you doing?" "Those men, they are very dangerous, very important. We should let them handle their own problems." "He's dying," I said bluntly. "And if he dies in your restaurant, Mr. Kim, what do you think happens to Hunnell Garden?" His face went pale. "What happened to him?" "Someone poisoned him. But I can help him if you let me do my job." Mr. Kim stared at me for a long moment, his calculation visible. Finally, he stepped aside. "You save him, yes? You make sure he lives." It wasn't compassion in his voice. It was fear. Fear of what powerful, dangerous men might do to his business if one of their own died on his watch. I nodded and pushed past him, my arms full of supplies. Back in the private room, Minjun had slumped against the wall, his expensive suit jacket discarded, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His skin had taken on a grayish tint, and when I knelt beside him, I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Still with me?" I asked, setting down my supplies. His eyes opened, unfocused but aware. Unfortunately, despite everything, I almost smiled. You're about to feel a lot worse before you feel better. I worked quickly, crushing the activated charcoal with the back of a spoon and mixing it with water. The resulting black liquid looked toxic itself, but it was the fastest way to bind whatever poison was in his system. Drink this, I said, holding the bowl to his lips. All of it. It's going to taste like death, but it might save your life. Minjun looked at the black liquid, then at me. You're sure about this? No, I admitted. But I'm the best option you have right now. Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. He took the bowl and drank, his face contorting at the taste. He managed half before he gagged, but I pushed it back to his lips. All of it, I insisted. We need to absorb as much of the poison as possible. He finished it, then immediately turned to the side and vomited, his whole body convulsing with the effort. I'd expected this, and was ready with towels, supporting his head as his body purged itself. When the spasms finally stopped, he collapsed back against the wall, gasping. His shirt was ruined, his perfect hair disheveled, and he looked more human than he had when I first entered the room. Vulnerable, even. Phase 1 complete, I said, reaching for the ginger root. Now we need to settle your stomach and reduce the inflammation. I grated the ginger into hot water that Maria had quietly left outside the door, added honey, and created a tea that smelled sharp and cleansing. This one you need to keep down, I told him. It'll help with the nausea and support your liver, while it processes whatever's left in your system. Minjun took the cup with shaking hands, and I noticed for the first time the calluses on his palms. Not the hands of someone who just sat behind a desk. These were hands that had known physical work, maybe even violence. He sipped the tea slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. Where did you learn this? My grandmother, I said, sitting back on my heels. She was what people in Atlanta called a root woman. She knew plants, knew healing, spent years teaching me even though I was more interested in art than medicine. Art, he repeated, as if testing the word. What kind? It was such a strange thing to ask in the middle of a crisis, but I found myself answering. Painting, mostly. Portraits. I wanted to go to art school, get my MFA, maybe teach someday. Why didn't you? The question hit deeper than he could have known. Life happened. My mother got sick. Medical bills. Then she recovered, but the debt didn't. Student loans I'd already taken out. I moved to LA thinking I could work and paint at night, save up, try again. And he was looking at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable, like he could see through the careful story I told myself. And I'm still here, 6 years later, still serving food, still painting on weekends when I'm not too tired, still telling myself next year will be different. I didn't mention the pregnancy, the new complication that made my dreams feel even more distant. 3 months along with a man who'd left me the moment I mentioned I was late, who'd called me careless and walked out of my life like I'd never mattered. Minjun was quiet for a moment, then said, "Thank you. For saving my life. For telling me the truth." "You're not saved yet," I said, businesslike again. "We need to monitor your vitals for the next few hours. If your condition worsens, we're going to the hospital whether you like it or not." He nodded, leaning his head back against the wall. His color was already better, the gray pallor fading to something closer to normal. The charcoal and ginger were working, buying his body time to heal. The door slid open, and one of Minjun's men appeared. The same one who'd demanded water earlier. He spoke rapidly in Korean, and Minjun responded in the same language, his voice weak but firm. The man's eyes slid to me, cold and assessing. He said something else, gesturing toward me in a way that felt like a threat. Minjun's response was sharp, almost angry. The man bowed slightly and left, sliding the door closed with more force than necessary. "What did he say?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "He wanted to know who you were, why I was trusting you, whether you were the one who poisoned me." Minjun's dark eyes found mine. "I told him you saved my life, and that makes you untouchable." The word sent a chill down my spine. I don't need to be untouchable. I just need to finish my shift and go home. "About that," Minjun said slowly, "I don't think you should go home tonight. Whoever poisoned me knew where I'd be, knew what I'd drink. They have information, access. Until I figure out who betrayed me, anyone I've had contact with tonight is potentially at risk." My heart started to pound. "You're saying I'm in danger because I helped you?" "I'm saying you're in danger because someone might think you're important to me now." His voice was matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather rather than threats to my life. "And in my world, Jasmine, that makes you a target." I stood up, my legs shaky. "Your world? What exactly is your world, Minjun Park?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw him make a decision. "I'm the head of the Seoul LA operations for my family's organization. We handle imports, exports, certain financial arrangements, some of it legal, much of it not. I have enemies, rivals, people who'd love to see me weakened or dead." "You're telling me you're a criminal," I said flatly. "I'm telling you I'm a businessman who operates in gray areas. But yes, if you need a simpler label, I suppose criminal works." I should have run. Should have walked out of that room and never looked back. But I thought of the rent due in 2 weeks, the credit card bills stacking up, the baby growing inside me that needed diapers and formula, and a future I couldn't afford on waitress wages. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Tonight? Just stay where I can protect you. Tomorrow?" He smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger, less dangerous. "Tomorrow we negotiate what comes next. Because Jasmine Carter, you saved my life tonight. And in my world, that debt is sacred." The door opened again, and this time 3 men entered, their eyes scanning the room with professional efficiency. Security, I realized. Bodyguards. One of them spoke to Minjun in Korean, and he responded before switching to English for my benefit. "My car's ready. We're leaving through the back entrance. You're coming with me." It wasn't a question. And as I looked at his face, at the certainty there, at the armed men watching my every move, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just in Minjun Park's debt anymore. I was in his world, and getting out might prove harder than getting in had been. Minjun's car turned out to be a black Mercedes S-Class, with windows so heavily tinted they were probably illegal. I slid into the back seat, the leather cool against my legs, the space so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Minjun sat beside me, his color much improved, but his movements still careful, like someone nursing invisible bruises. 2 of his men sat in the front, silent and watchful. We pulled away from Hanul Garden through an alley I'd never noticed before, the kind of route that people who didn't want to be seen would use. Through the tinted windows, I watched Koreatown slide past, the neon signs and crowded streets giving way to wider roads and fewer people. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud in the hushed interior. "My home. I have a private doctor who'll check me over, make sure your remedies did their job." Minjun's voice was stronger now, more command than conversation. "And we need to talk somewhere secure." His home turned out to be a penthouse in one of those glass towers in downtown LA, the kind where doormen wore better suits than most people wore to weddings. We rode an elevator that required a key card to access the top floor, and when the doors opened directly into his apartment, I felt my breath catch. The space was enormous, all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my car, and art on the walls that I recognized from museum catalogs. A genuine Rothko hung above a floating fireplace. A small sculpture that looked suspiciously like a Brancusi sat on a side table. "You collect art," I said, momentarily forgetting everything else. "I appreciate beauty in all its forms." Minjun was watching me, his dark eyes tracking my reaction. The Rothko was my first major purchase. The Brancusi I won in a card game from a collector in Hong Kong. I moved closer to the Rothko, my fingers itching to touch the canvas even though I knew better. The colors seemed to vibrate in the low lighting, orange and red bleeding into each other with that perfect imperfection Rothko was famous for. "It's real," I breathed. "Would you like to paint again?" The question came from behind me. Seriously, I mean, not just weekends when you're not exhausted. I turned to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "What do you mean?" "I mean I owe you my life, Jasmine. That's not a debt I take lightly. If you want to paint, I can make that happen. Studio space, supplies, time, whatever you need." It was too much, too fast. "Why would you do that?" "Because you saved me when you didn't have to. Because you could have called an ambulance, let the professionals handle it, protected yourself. But you didn't. You put your hands on a stranger and fought for his life." He moved closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle. That kind of courage deserves to be rewarded. "And what do you get out of it?" I asked, because my grandmother had taught me that nothing was free, especially not from powerful men. Minjun smiled. "Your trust, your loyalty, your continued presence in my life." The way he said it made my skin prickle with awareness. Not attraction, exactly, though he was undeniably beautiful. More like recognition, like I'd just been shown the terms of a contract I hadn't realized I was signing. A door opened, and an older man entered carrying a medical bag. He spoke to Minjun in rapid Korean, then switched to English when he saw me. "I'm Dr. Kang. You're the one who administered first aid?" "Yes," I said. "Activated charcoal, ginger tea, induced vomiting. His vitals seemed to stabilize about 40 minutes ago." "Doctor." Kang nodded approvingly. "Smart thinking. May I examine him?" I stepped back, suddenly feeling out of place in this expensive apartment with these powerful men and their dangerous secrets. While Dr. Kang worked, I moved to the windows, looking out over Los Angeles spread below like a carpet of lights. I'd lived in this city for 6 years and never seen it from this height, from this perspective. From up here, the grid of streets looked orderly, manageable, nothing like the chaotic tangle it was at ground level. From up here, you could pretend the city was yours to control. "You're in excellent health considering what you ingested," Dr. Kang was saying. "Miss Carter's treatment likely saved your life. The toxin was oleander-based, highly effective in the right dose. Another 30 minutes without intervention, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Oleander. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Beautiful and deadly. Child. Never trust a pretty flower to be safe. "Can you identify who made it?" Minjun asked. "The preparation suggests someone with pharmaceutical knowledge. This wasn't a street-level poisoner. Someone wanted you dead and had the resources to make it happen professionally." After Dr. Kang left with promises to check back in 24 hours, Minjun poured 2 glasses of water and handed me one. His color was almost normal now, the gray pallor completely gone. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a low couch that probably cost more than I made in a year. "We need to talk." I sat, perching on the edge of the cushion, ready to run even though I had nowhere to go. Minjun settled across from me, his posture relaxed despite everything that had happened. "Tell me about your family," he said. The question caught me off guard. "Why?" "Because I need to understand who you are, where you come from, what matters to you." It felt like an interrogation disguised as conversation, but I found myself answering. "My mother lives in Atlanta. She's a teacher." My father died when I was 8, heart attack. My grandmother raised me as much as my mother did. She passed 2 years ago. Siblings? No, just me. The father of your child? I froze. How did you know? Minjun's smile was thin. I notice things, Jasmine. The way you touch your stomach when you're stressed. The slight change in how you carry your weight. The fact that you only drank water tonight despite looking like you could use something stronger. I felt exposed, vulnerable. He's not in the picture. Doesn't want to be. I'm handling it alone. You shouldn't have to. There was something in his voice, an edge of anger that seemed directed at a man he'd never met. How far along? 3 months, almost 4. Minjun was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes fixed on my face. I want to hire you. As what? A waitress? A nurse? As my personal assistant, my translator for certain English-speaking clients, my cultural consultant. He leaned forward. And because I trust you in a way I don't trust most people. You don't know me. I know you saved my life tonight when it would have been safer to let me die. I know you asked for nothing in return. I know you're smart, resourceful, and brave. His voice dropped lower. And I know you need security that your current situation isn't providing. He wasn't wrong. My apartment was a studio in a building where the elevator broke twice a week, and my neighbors included a dealer who kept irregular hours. I had no health insurance, no savings, no plan for how I'd afford a baby on waitress wages. What would I have to do? I asked carefully. Attend meetings with me. Help bridge cultural gaps. Be present when I need someone I trust nearby. He paused. And accept my protection. Because after tonight, anyone watching me will know you matter. That makes you vulnerable. What if I say no? Then I'll have my men watch your building anyway. Drive past your work. Make sure no one connected to tonight's attempt on my life decides to tie up loose ends by eliminating witnesses. His voice was matter-of-fact. You can accept my help voluntarily, or I can provide it without your cooperation. But either way, Jasmine, you're under my protection now. It should have felt like a threat, but somehow it felt more like a promise. Maybe I was too tired to be scared. Maybe the pregnancy hormones were affecting my judgment. Or maybe I'd already made my choice the moment I decided to save him instead of calling for help. How much? I asked. $5,000 a week to start. More once I determine you're committed. Health insurance through one of my companies. A place to live if you need it. $5,000 a week. $20,000 a month. More money than I'd ever imagined making. Enough to pay off debt, prepare for the baby, maybe even start saving for the future. And when you decide I've outlived my usefulness, I asked. Minjun's smile was sharp. I reward loyalty, Jasmine. Stay loyal to me, and I'll make sure you and your child never want for anything. Betray me? He didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication hung in the air between us. I thought of my grandmother, of her warnings about owing powerful people. But I also thought of the rent I couldn't pay, the medical bills coming with the pregnancy, the baby who deserved better than a mother working herself to exhaustion for minimum wage. I'll need to give notice at the restaurant. Already handled. I bought Hanul Garden an hour ago. Mr. Kim's quite happy to release you from your obligations. My jaw dropped. You bought the restaurant? I bought the building. The restaurant comes with it. Consider it an investment in Koreatown real estate. His voice was casual, like purchasing buildings was something he did every day. Maybe it was. What about my apartment? Pack what you need. I have a guest house here. Separate entrance, full kitchen, security. You can stay there until we figure out something more permanent. It was all happening too fast, too much. But I thought of that tiny studio with its broken elevator and thin walls, of the baby growing inside me who deserved safety and stability, of the art I'd stopped making because I was too tired to hold a brush. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll work for you. But I need boundaries. I'm not your property. I'm an employee." "Agreed," Minjun said. "But understand, Jasmine. In accepting my protection, you're entering my world. And my world has different rules than the one you're used to." He stood, offering his hand. I took it, his grip firm and warm, and felt the weight of the choice I'd just made settle over me like a coat that didn't quite fit. "Welcome to my life," Minjun said softly. "I promise it won't be boring." And looking into his dark eyes, seeing the danger and the promise there in equal measure, I believed him. The guest house was nothing like my cramped studio. It was a separate structure behind Minjun's penthouse, accessible by a private elevator that required its own keycard. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen with appliances I'd only seen in cooking shows, a bathroom with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, and windows that overlooked a private garden impossibly suspended stories above the city. I stood in the middle of the living room at 2 a.m, my few belongings in a duffel bag that Minjun's driver had helped me pack from my old apartment. My landlord had been surprisingly understanding when I'd called to break my lease. Then again, Minjun had probably already made that call too. "Everything you need should be here," Minjun had said, showing me through the space. "Food in the refrigerator, toiletries in the bathroom, basics in the closet. My assistant will take you shopping tomorrow for anything else." He'd left me alone after that, with instructions to rest and a phone number to call if I needed anything. But sleep felt impossible. I kept replaying the night in my head. The poisoning, my decision to help, the drive to this penthouse, the conversation that had ended with me accepting a job I didn't fully understand from a man who'd bought a building just to release me from my obligations. My hand drifted to my stomach, the secret I was carrying feeling heavier here in this expensive space. 3 months along with a baby whose father hadn't wanted anything to do with either of us. A baby I'd been planning to raise alone while working double shifts and hoping for the best. Now I had health insurance, a safe place to live, more money than I'd ever imagined, and all I had to do was be loyal to a man who'd been poisoned tonight by people in his own organization. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Can't sleep either. Come upstairs if you want. Main penthouse. Elevator code is your birthday." I stared at the message. He knew my birthday. Of course he did. He probably knew everything about me by now, had his people dig through every record, every social media post, every parking ticket. I should have stayed in the guest house, should have maintained boundaries. But something pulled me toward that elevator, toward the man upstairs who'd looked at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse. I found him on the balcony, looking out over the city, a glass of water in his hand. He'd changed into comfortable clothes, black pants and a simple t-shirt that showed off the lean muscle beneath. Without the suit, he looked younger, more approachable. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without turning around. "Too much happened tonight. My brain won't stop processing." "I know the feeling." He gestured to the seat beside him. "Join me?" I sat, and for a while we just looked at the city together. The silence was comfortable, unusual for 2 people who barely knew each other. "Tell me about the poisoning," I said finally. "Who would want you dead?" Minjun was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, 3 factions within my organization. The Kim group thinks I'm too soft, too willing to negotiate instead of using force. The Lee faction believes I'm too young, that leadership should have passed to someone with more traditional experience. And the Park group, my own family's branch, includes cousins who think they'd do a better job. "Your own family wants you dead?" "Wants me replaced anyway. Dead is just the most permanent form of replacement." His voice was matter of fact, like discussing murder attempts was normal dinner conversation. Why keep doing it? Why not just walk away? He looked at me then, his dark eyes intense. Because it's all I know. I was groomed for this from the time I could walk. My father ran these operations before me, his father before him. It's legacy, duty, family. You don't just walk away from that. Even if it kills you? Even then. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Besides, walking away doesn't guarantee safety. My enemies would see it as weakness, an opportunity. At least while I'm in power, I have resources to protect myself. And now, to protect you. The way he said it, so certain of his right to decide my safety, should have annoyed me. Instead, I felt something else. Not exactly attraction, though he was undeniably beautiful. More like recognition. Like seeing someone who carried the same kind of weight I did, just in a different form. "What was your grandmother like?" he asked suddenly. "The one who taught you healing." The question surprised me into honesty. Strong. Scary sometimes. She didn't tolerate excuses or weakness, but she loved fiercely, and she knew things. Plants, healing, how to read people. I smiled at the memory. She told me once that I had healing hands, that I'd save someone important someday, and that decision would change my life. She was right. She usually was. Drove my mother crazy, actually. Mom wanted me to be practical, to get a business degree, work in an office. Grandma wanted me to follow my instincts, even when they didn't make financial sense. What did you want? To paint, to create something beautiful, to maybe teach other artists someday. I laughed softly. Sounds naive, doesn't it? Especially now. It sounds honest. Minjun turned to face me fully. What if I told you that you could still do that? Paint, I mean. Create. I have connections in the art world. Galleries, collectors, critics. I could open doors. In exchange for what? Your loyalty, your trust, your continued presence in my life. There was something in his voice, an intensity that made my pulse quicken. Why does it matter so much? You barely know me. Because you saved my life tonight without asking what I could do for you. Because you looked at me and saw a person, not a title or a threat. Because in my world, Jasmine, that's rarer than you can imagine. He was closer now, and I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. This was dangerous territory, crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed between employer and employee. But I didn't move away. I need to be honest with you, I said quietly. I'm pregnant. Almost 4 months. The father isn't in the picture and won't be. I'm going to be a single mother working for a man whose enemies might decide I'm a good target. This is complicated before we even add whatever this is between us. This? His voice was soft, questioning. This tension, this awareness. The fact that I'm sitting here at 3 a.m. instead of sleeping in the very comfortable guest house you provided. Minjun smiled, and it was the first genuinely warm expression I'd seen from him. I'm aware of the complications, Jasmine, all of them. And I'm still here, still offering you my protection, my resources, my loyalty. Why? Because I recognize something in you. The same thing you probably recognize in me. We're both survivors. Both doing what we have to do to take care of the people we love. Both trapped by circumstances we didn't fully choose. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek with surprising gentleness. And because when I look at you, I see possibility. A chance for something real in a life that's been filled with calculation and strategy. I should have pulled away. Should have reminded him about professional boundaries and the massive power imbalance between us. But his touch felt different from anything I'd experienced before. Not demanding or possessive, but wondering. like he was memorizing the feel of my skin. "This is a terrible idea," I whispered. "Probably," he agreed. "But I'm known for making calculated risks. And you, Jasmine Carter, might be worth the biggest risk I've ever taken." He leaned in slowly, giving me time to move away, time to say no. But I didn't. When his lips touched mine, it was soft, questioning, nothing like the demanding kisses I'd experienced before. This was an invitation, not a conquest. I kissed him back, my hand coming up to rest against his chest, where I could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady. The kiss deepened, his hand sliding into my hair, and I felt something shift between us. Something that went beyond employer and employee, beyond protector and protected. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, his forehead rested against mine. "I can't promise you safety," he said quietly. "I can't promise that my world won't be dangerous or complicated or sometimes frightening. But I can promise that I'll fight to protect you with everything I have. And I can promise that if you give me a chance, I'll never make you regret trusting me." Looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there beneath the power and control, I made another choice. Maybe not the smart one, maybe not the safe one, but mine. "Okay," I said. "Let's see where this goes." His smile was brilliant, transforming his whole face. "Good. Now go get some sleep. We have a busy day tomorrow." "Doing what?" "Shopping for everything you and the baby will need, meeting with my people, and starting to figure out who tried to kill me tonight." His voice hardened on the last sentence, because whoever it was made one critical mistake. "What's that?" "They brought you into my life. And now that you're here, I'm going to make sure no one can ever take you away." It should have sounded possessive, controlling. Instead, it sounded like a promise. And as I rode the elevator back down to the guest house, I realized that I was beginning to trust him, to believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd made the right choice. My grandmother's voice whispered in my memory, "Sometimes the most dangerous men make the best protectors, child. Just make sure you're protecting your heart as much as he's protecting your life." I touched my stomach, feeling the small life growing there. "We're in this together," I whispered. "Whatever comes next." And in the darkness of the guest house, I finally fell asleep, dreaming of possibilities I'd never dared to imagine before. Morning came too early, sunlight streaming through windows that I'd forgotten to cover. I woke disoriented, my body still expecting the familiar sounds of my old building, the broken elevator, the arguing neighbors, the traffic on the street below. Instead, there was silence. Perfect, expensive silence that felt almost unnatural. My phone showed 7 missed messages, all from Minjun's assistant. A woman named Grace Park had apparently been assigned to help me transition into my new position. The messages detailed a schedule that made my head spin. Wardrobe consultant at 9, security briefing at 10, lunch meeting with Minjun at noon, medical appointment at 2. I dragged myself to the shower, letting the hot water ease muscles that still ached from yesterday's tension. The bathroom was stocked with expensive products, the kind I'd seen in magazines but never thought I'd use. The towels were thick and soft, the kind that probably cost more than my old monthly grocery budget. By the time I was dressed in my own clothes, jeans and a simple blouse that suddenly felt shabby, there was a knock at the door. Grace Park turned out to be a woman in her early 40s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, her hair in a perfect chignon. "Miss Carter," she said with a professional smile. "I'm Grace. I'll be helping you adjust to your new position. Shall we begin?" The wardrobe consultant arrived with racks of clothing, everything in my size. How they determined that, I didn't ask. I spent an hour trying on outfits that cost more than I used to make in a month, while Grace and the consultant discussed appropriate professional attire, and representing Mr. Park's organization. By the time we finished, I had an entirely new wardrobe: business suits, casual wear, formal dresses, shoes, accessories. All of it carefully chosen to project an image of competence and sophistication. "You'll need to look the part," Grace explained as we headed to the security briefing. "Mr. Park's associates will judge you immediately. We need them to see strength, intelligence, someone worthy of his trust." The security briefing was conducted by a man named James Cho, head of Minjun's personal protection team. He was former military, his bearing still rigid with discipline, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. "Your primary vulnerability is your routine," he said, pulling up diagrams on a tablet. "Predictable schedules make you an easy target. We'll be varying your routes, your timing, everything. You'll have a security detail whenever you leave the penthouse. 2 men minimum, 4 for higher risk situations." "What constitutes a higher risk situation?" I asked. "Public events, meetings with unknown parties, anywhere Mr. Park's enemies might see an opportunity." James's voice was matter of fact. "Miss Carter, you need to understand something. By aligning yourself with Mr. Park, you've become a strategic asset. His enemies will study you, look for ways to use you against him. Our job is to make sure that never happens." The reality of my situation was sinking in with every word. This wasn't just a job. This was entering a world where my life had value primarily because of my connection to Minjun. "Has there been any progress identifying who poisoned him?" I asked. James and Grace exchanged a glance. "That's something Mr. Park will discuss with you over lunch," Grace said smoothly. The lunch meeting took place in Minjun's penthouse, a private meal prepared by his personal chef. I'd changed into one of the new outfits, a simple but elegant dress that made me feel like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Minjun looked better than he had any right to after being poisoned less than 24 hours ago. He was back in a suit, this one a deep charcoal that made his eyes seem even darker. When I entered, he stood, his eyes traveling over my new appearance with obvious appreciation. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "I look expensive," I corrected, still uncomfortable with how much money had been spent on me in one morning. Beautiful and expensive aren't mutually exclusive. He gestured to the table set for 2. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Over lunch, a meal that was both delicious and intimidating in its complexity, Minjun laid out what he'd learned. "The poison was acquired through a pharmacy connection we've used for years. Someone inside my organization ordered it, used established channels, made it look legitimate." His voice was cold, controlled. "That narrows the suspects to maybe 15 people. And you trust me more than 15 people you've worked with for years?" "I trust you because you have nothing to gain from my death. Everyone else? They all have motives: power, money, revenge, ambition." He met my eyes. "You saved my life when it benefited you nothing. That kind of action reveals character. What happens when you find out who did it? I deal with it. Permanently." He said it casually, but I heard the steel beneath. "In my world, Jasmine, betrayal has one punishment. I can't afford to be merciful." I thought about that while picking at my food. This was who he was. Not just a businessman in gray areas, but someone who would kill to protect his position. And I was choosing to stay in his orbit. "The medical appointment," I said, changing the subject. "Is that really necessary?" "You're pregnant and working for me. Yes, it's necessary. The best obstetrician in Los Angeles will see you. Everything will be covered, and you'll have access to the finest prenatal care available." His voice softened. "I meant what I said, Jasmine. Your child will want for nothing. It's not your child. No, but you're under my protection, and that extends to anyone you care about." He paused. Has the father really walked away completely? He made his position clear. He didn't want a relationship, didn't want a baby, and definitely didn't want any financial responsibility. I tried to keep my voice neutral, but the hurt crept through. I'm better off without him. He's a fool. Minjun's voice was harsh. Any man who'd walk away from you and his child is worse than a fool. He's a coward. The defense surprised me. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and resourceful. I know you put others before yourself. I know you're carrying a child alone because some man couldn't see your worth. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I see your worth, Jasmine, and I promise you, I'll never make you regret trusting me with it. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. This was moving fast, too fast, but part of me didn't want it to slow down. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. James Cho entered, his expression grim. Sir, we have a situation. The Lee faction called for a meeting. They're demanding answers about last night. Minjun's expression hardened. When? Tonight, 8 o'clock. Neutral ground. The warehouse in Silver Lake. That's not neutral ground, Minjun said coldly. That's their territory. They're aware. They say if you don't show, they'll consider it an admission of weakness. I watched Minjun think, watched calculation flash across his face. Fine, I'll go. Full security detail. And Jasmine comes with me. Both James and I spoke simultaneously. What? Sir, that's... James began. Too dangerous, I finished. Minjun looked at me, his dark eyes intense. They need to see you. Need to understand that you're under my protection and that you matter to me. It establishes you as off limits, makes you safer in the long run. Or paints a target on my back, I countered. The target is already there. Now we're just making the rules clear. He stood, his posture commanding. You'll be safe. I'll have 20 men there. James will personally stay by your side, and no one will dare touch you while I'm watching. It wasn't a request. And as I looked at his face, at the determination there, I realized this was part of my new reality. I wasn't just working for Minjun Park. I was being absorbed into his world, displayed as proof of his power, used as a chess piece in games I didn't fully understand. Fine, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But I want a weapon. Minjun's smile was approving. Smart. James will get you a firearm and teach you how to use it properly. We have a few hours before we need to leave. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. The medical appointment confirmed what I already knew. I was healthy, the baby was developing normally, and I was due in late spring. The obstetrician was professional and thorough, asking no questions about the sudden upgrade in my healthcare. Then came the firearms training. James took me to a private range in the basement of Minjun's building, where he taught me the basics of a compact 9mm that would fit in my purse. Point and shoot, he instructed. Don't think about it. If someone threatens you, you fire center mass. Understand? I nodded, the weight of the gun in my hand both foreign and somehow right. My grandmother had owned a shotgun she kept for protection. I'd fired it once as a teenager. This was different. Sleeker. More lethal. By the time evening came, I was dressed in one of my new outfits. Tailored pants, a silk blouse, a blazer that hid the holster at my hip. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. This wasn't Jasmine Carter, struggling waitress and aspiring artist. This was someone harder, someone who carried a gun and was about to walk into a meeting with criminals as the protected woman of their leader. Minjun appeared in the doorway of the guest house, his eyes traveling over me with obvious appreciation. Ready? No, I admitted, but I'll do it anyway. His smile was approving. That's all courage really is, Jasmine. Doing what scares you because it needs to be done. He offered his arm, and I took it, feeling the solid strength beneath his expensive suit. We rode the elevator down to the parking garage, where 3 black SUVs waited, filled with his security team. As we drove through Los Angeles toward Silver Lake, Minjun's hand found mine. "Whatever happens tonight," he said quietly, "remember that you're under my protection. No one will hurt you. I won't allow it." I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his certainty. "And what protects you?" "You do," he said, and there was something vulnerable in his voice. "You saved my life yesterday, Jasmine. Now you're giving me a reason to protect it." We pulled up to the warehouse as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Through the tinted windows, I could see other vehicles, other men waiting. The Lee faction, ready to question Minjun about the poisoning, about his leadership, about whether he was strong enough to hold power. Minjun turned to me, his dark eyes intense. "Stay close to James. Don't engage unless spoken to directly. And if anything goes wrong, you run. You don't think. You don't fight. You just run. Understand?" I nodded, my mouth dry. "Good." He kissed me then, hard and possessive, acclaiming as much as a comfort. "Let's show them what we're made of." We stepped out of the SUV together, his hand at the small of my back, and walked into the warehouse where his enemies waited. And I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change again, that the choices I'd made in the last 24 hours were leading me somewhere I couldn't predict and might not survive. But Minjun's hand was warm and steady on my back, and for now, that was enough. The warehouse was exactly what you'd imagine from crime movies. Concrete floors, high ceilings with exposed beams, dim lighting that created more shadows than illumination. But the people gathered inside were far more terrifying than any set design. About 30 men filled the space, divided into clear factions. I recognized some faces from the restaurant, others from news articles I'd glimpsed over the years. These were the powers in Los Angeles' Korean organized crime world, and they were all watching Minjun and me with calculating eyes. James stayed close to my left side, his hand near his weapon, his body positioned to shield me if necessary. Minjun walked ahead, his posture confident, every inch the leader despite being outnumbered. "Minjun Si," an older man said, stepping forward. He was perhaps 60, with silver hair and a face that had seen decades of violence. "You honor us by coming." The words were polite, but the tone was mocking. This was Lee Sang-woo, the head of the Lee faction that wanted Minjun replaced. "When Lee Si calls a meeting, I respond," Minjun replied smoothly. "Though I note this location wasn't agreed upon through proper channels." "Proper channels?" Lee laughed. "You were poisoned in your own territory, at a restaurant you apparently now own. Perhaps proper channels are no longer functioning as they should." The implication was clear. Minjun's security was compromised, his leadership weak. Murmurs rippled through the gathered men. "The poisoning is being handled," Minjun said, his voice cold. "The responsible party will be identified and dealt with. Permanently." "And what of her?" Another man stepped forward, younger, maybe 40, with expensive clothes and predatory eyes. Park Jae-sung, Minjun's cousin, the one who thought he deserved leadership. His gaze raked over me with obvious contempt. "You bring a foreigner to a meeting of family business? An outsider who doesn't even speak our language?" "I speak some Korean," I said quietly in that language, using the formal speech patterns my grandmother had helped me learn from Korean neighbors in Atlanta. "And I understand more than you might think." The room went silent. Park Jae-sung's face flushed with anger. "She's under my protection," Minjun said, switching to English so I could follow. "Anyone who touches her touches me. Anyone who threatens her threatens my entire operation. I trust her more than I trust many of you in this room." "Why?" Lee Sang-woo asked. "What does she offer that demands such loyalty?" She saved my life, Min-jun said simply. While others in my organization were busy planning my death, she acted without thought for her own benefit. That kind of integrity is rare, worth protecting, or worth exploiting. Park Jae-sung sneered. How do we know she wasn't involved in the poisoning, setting herself up as the hero so she could gain your trust? I felt anger flare, hot and sharp. I'm a waitress who happened to know first aid. I had no idea who Min-jun Park was until after I saved his life. I didn't ask for payment, didn't ask for anything. So maybe direct your suspicion at the people who actually had access to the poison instead of attacking me because I'm an easy target. The room went silent again. Min-jun's hand found mine, squeezing gently in approval. She speaks well, Lee Sang-woo observed. Perhaps too well for a simple waitress. What's your real background, Miss Carter? Before I could answer, one of Min-jun's security team rushed in, his face urgent. He spoke rapidly in Korean, too fast for me to follow. But I caught a few words. Danger. Outside. Attack. Min-jun's expression hardened. How many? At least 20. Armed. Kim faction. They're surrounding the building. The Kim faction. The ones who thought Min-jun was too soft. This wasn't a coincidence. This meeting had been a setup, a way to gather Min-jun's enemies in one place while the real attack came from outside. Everyone out, Min-jun ordered, his voice commanding. Back exits, now. But it was too late. The sound of gunfire erupted outside, bullets pinging off metal, men shouting. The warehouse's main doors burst open, and armed men poured in. Everything happened in seconds. James shoved me behind a concrete pillar, his weapon drawn. Min-jun's security team returned fire, the noise deafening in the enclosed space. I saw Park Jae-sung go down, blood blooming on his shoulder. Saw Lee Sang-woo's men scramble for cover. And I saw Min-jun, standing exposed in the center of it all, calmly giving orders to his men, directing their defense like a general on a battlefield. Get down! I screamed at him, but he couldn't hear me over the gunfire. One of the attackers aimed directly at Min-jun, his rifle steady. Without thinking, I pulled my weapon from its holster, remembered James's training, point and shoot, don't think, and fired. The recoil nearly knocked me over. My shot went wide, missing the attacker but close enough to make him flinch, to throw off his aim. His bullet missed Min-jun by inches. Then James was there, his weapon taking down the attacker with professional precision. But more were coming, pouring through the doors, and we were trapped. The back! Min-jun shouted. Everyone to the back exit! His men formed a protective circle around him, around me, moving as a unit toward the rear of the warehouse. I stayed low, my weapon in shaking hands, James's body shielding mine. We burst through the back door into an alley where Min-jun's SUVs were waiting, engines running. His men provided covering fire as we scrambled inside, bullets sparking off metal and concrete. The driver floored it the moment the doors closed, tires squealing as we raced away from the warehouse. Through the back window, I could see the firefight continuing, could see bodies on the ground, could see the chaos we'd barely escaped. Min-jun pulled me against him, his hands checking me for injuries. Are you hurt? Did anyone touch you? I'm fine, I managed, though I was shaking violently. Min-jun, I shot at someone. I actually fired my weapon. You saved my life, he said, his voice fierce. That man was going to kill me, and you stopped him. The reality of that hit me like a physical blow. I'd fired a weapon at another human being. Whether I'd hit him or not, I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. James, Min-jun said, turning to his security chief. Assessment. Kim faction, definitely. They knew about the meeting, used it as cover for an assassination attempt. We lost 3 men. They lost at least 8. James's voice was professional, but I could hear the anger beneath. This was coordinated. Someone fed them information. The traitor in my organization, Min-jun said quietly. They're working with the Kim faction. That narrows it down significantly. Back at the penthouse, Minjun's living room was filled with his remaining leadership. They spoke rapidly in Korean, voices overlapping, anger and fear mixing. I sat on the couch, still shaking, still processing what had happened. Dr. Kang appeared, insisting on checking me over despite my protests. "You're pregnant, Miss Carter. Even stress can affect the baby. Let me make sure everything is fine." He examined me quickly, efficiently, and pronounced both me and the baby healthy. But his eyes were worried when he looked at Minjun. Once the doctor left and the meeting broke up, Minjun came to sit beside me. His suit was torn. There was blood on his sleeve, not his own, and he looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I brought you into this, put you in danger. You could have been killed tonight." "So could you," I replied. "Minjun, this is your life. This is what you deal with every day, and I chose to be part of it. You can still leave. I'll set you up somewhere safe, give you enough money to start over, protect you from a distance." His voice was strained. "You don't have to stay in this world." I thought about it, really thought about it. I could take his money, raise my baby somewhere quiet, paint in peace. Never have to fire a weapon again. Never have to watch men die in front of me. But I'd also never feel his hand in mine. Never see the vulnerable side he only showed me. Never be part of something bigger than myself. Something that made me feel alive in a way I'd never experienced. "What if I want to stay?" I asked. His eyes met mine, dark and intense. "Then you need to understand what that means. I'm at war now. The Kim faction tried to kill me tonight. They'll try again, and they'll target you because they know you matter to me. I'm already a target," I said. "At least here, with you, I have protection, resources, a chance to fight back." "Jasmine, I shot at someone tonight to save you," I interrupted. "I crossed that line already. I'm not innocent anymore, Minjun. I can't go back to being the waitress who didn't know how deep the water was. I'm in it now, all the way." He pulled me against him, his face buried in my hair. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," I agreed. "But you're stuck with me anyway." We sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the aftermath of violence, finding comfort in shared survival. Finally, Minjun pulled back, his hands cupping my face. "I need to find the traitor, the one who's been feeding information to my enemies, who ordered the poison, who set up tonight's attack." His voice was cold now, back to the leader who commanded loyalty through fear and respect. "And when I find them, I need to make an example that ensures no one ever betrays me again." "How will you do it?" "By using the one advantage they don't know I have." His smile was sharp. They think you're just a waitress I've become attached to. They don't realize you're observant, intelligent, capable of seeing patterns they miss. You've been in that restaurant for 6 years, Jasmine. You've served my organization's people hundreds of times. You might have seen something, heard something, that could identify our traitor. I thought back to my years at Hanul Garden, to the faces that came through, the conversations in Korean I'd partially understood, the interactions between men who thought a waitress was invisible. "There was someone," I said slowly. "A man who came in every few weeks, always met with different people from your organization. He spoke Korean, but his accent was different, like he'd learned it somewhere else. And he always paid cash, never credit cards." Minjun's eyes sharpened. "Describe him." I closed my eyes, pulling up memories. Mid-40s, short hair, graying at the temples. Always wore nice clothes, but nothing flashy. Had a tattoo on his left wrist, small, looked like Korean characters, but I could never see them clearly enough to read. That could be Kim Tae-young. He's been my accountant for 10 years. handles money transfers, legitimate business covers. Min-jun pulled out his phone, making calls in rapid Korean. Within an hour, we had confirmation. Kim Tae-yang had been skimming money for years, covering it up through complex accounting. When Min-jun had ordered an audit after the poisoning, Kim had panicked, reached out to the Kim faction for protection, and offered them information in exchange for safety. "He'll be at his office tonight," Min-jun said, his voice cold. "Thinks he's safe because I don't know yet. James, gather the team. We're bringing him in." "I'm coming," I said. "Jasmine, I identified him. I'm part of this. I'm coming." Min-jun looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Stay behind security at all times. This isn't going to be pretty." Kim Tae-yang's office was in a bland building in Koreatown, 3rd floor, accessible by stairs. Min-jun's team moved with professional efficiency, clearing the building, securing exits. When we burst into Kim's office, he was at his desk, destroying documents, his face going white when he saw Min-jun. "Sir, I can explain," he began in Korean. "English?" Min-jun said coldly. "So Miss Carter can understand every word. She's the one who identified you." Kim's eyes found mine, and I saw hatred there mixed with fear. "The waitress? You believe a waitress over me?" "She has no reason to lie. You have every reason to." Min-jun gestured, and his men grabbed Kim, forcing him to his knees. "You've been stealing from me for years. You ordered the poison that nearly killed me. You set up tonight's attack that killed 3 of my men. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right now." "The Kim faction will retaliate," Kim said desperately. "They know everything. Kill me, and you start a war you can't win." "I'm already at war," Min-jun replied. "The question is how many of my enemies I take down before it's over." He pulled out his weapon, pressing it to Kim's forehead. The man was crying now, begging in Korean, promising things I couldn't follow. I should have looked away, should have let Min-jun handle his business without witnessing it. But I couldn't. This was the world I'd chosen, the man I'd chosen. I needed to see all of it, understand what being with him really meant. "Wait," I said quietly. Min-jun's eyes found mine, questioning. "Make him give up everything first. Names, accounts, connections, everything he told the Kim faction. Make his death serve a purpose." Min-jun's smile was approving and terrifying. "Smart." He lowered the weapon. "You heard her. Start talking." Kim talked. For an hour, he detailed everything, the money he'd stolen, the information he'd sold, the people in Min-jun's organization who were sympathetic to the Kim faction, the planned attacks for the next month. James recorded it all on his phone. When Kim finally ran out of information, he looked up at Min-jun with desperate hope. "I've told you everything. Please. Mercy. Mercy," Min-jun repeated. He looked at me. "What do you think, Jasmine? Does a traitor who tried to have me killed, who endangered everyone loyal to me, who put you in danger tonight, does he deserve mercy?" I thought about the 3 men who died tonight protecting Min-jun. Thought about the baby growing inside me who could have been orphaned before birth. Thought about the world I was choosing to inhabit, and what justice meant in that world. "No," I said quietly. "He doesn't." Min-jun nodded once, raised his weapon, and fired. The sound echoed in the small office. Kim slumped to the ground, a neat hole in his forehead, his eyes still wide with disbelief. I didn't look away. This was the reality of Min-jun's world. This was what protection and loyalty cost. "Clean this up," Min-jun ordered his men. "Make it look like a Kim faction hit. Let them think they're killing their own informants." He turned to me, his eyes searching my face. "Are you all right?" "I just watched you execute a man," I said. "I'm not sure all right applies." "But you're still here," he observed. still standing beside me. "I told you, I'm in this all the way." I took his hand, feeling the warmth of it despite what those hands had just done. For better or worse. Over the next weeks, we dismantled the conspiracy piece by piece. Using Kim's information, Minjun identified and removed the traitors in his organization. Some he killed, others he exiled. A few he turned, making them loyal through a combination of fear and reward. The Kim faction tried to retaliate, but Minjun was always 3 steps ahead. Buildings burned, shipments disappeared. Key members were arrested through anonymous tips to law enforcement. Within a month, the Kim faction was shattered, its leadership dead or in prison. My role evolved. I became Minjun's translator, yes, but also his strategist, his sounding board, the one person he trusted completely. I attended meetings, offered perspectives, and gradually earned respect from his organization, not just as his protected woman, but as someone valuable in my own right. And my baby grew. By 6 months, I couldn't hide it anymore. Minjun threw a party, introducing me to his world as both his partner and mother of the child he'd claimed as his to protect. His family was shocked, particularly his traditional parents, but Minjun made it clear. I was permanent. Accept me or lose him. They chose to accept me. My art, which I thought I'd have to give up, became something new. I painted the duality of my life, beauty and violence, love and danger, hope and fear. A gallery owner Minjun knew saw my work and offered me a show. It sold out in 3 days. 8 months after the poisoning, I gave birth to a daughter. Minjun was there, holding my hand through labor, cutting the cord, crying when they placed her in his arms. "She's perfect," he whispered, looking at her with wonder. "What should we name her?" "Grace," I said, "for the grace that brought us together." He kissed me then, gentle and reverent. "Grace Park Carter, I like it." "Just Carter," I corrected. "We're not married." "Yet," he said, and pulled out a ring from his pocket. "Jasmine Carter, will you marry me? Not because it's strategic or politically useful, but because I love you. Because you're the only person who's ever seen me as human. Because I want to spend the rest of my life protecting you and being protected by you." I looked at the ring, simple, elegant, exactly my taste. And then at his face, at the vulnerability there, at the hope. "Yes," I said, "on one condition. Anything. We turn your organization legitimate. No more violence, no more crime. We use your resources for good, help the community, build something our daughter can be proud of." Minjun was quiet for a long moment. "That will take years. Some of my people won't accept it. We'll make enemies of different factions." "I know, but you said anything." He looked at our daughter, then at me. "Then I'll do it. For her. For you. For us." 2 years later, we were married in a ceremony that blended my African-American heritage with his Korean traditions. My mother flew in from Atlanta, still not entirely comfortable with my choice, but loving her granddaughter too much to stay away. Minjun's parents, slowly warming to me, welcomed me into their family with traditional ceremonies. The organization's transformation was slow and painful. We lost some members who couldn't accept the new direction, made enemies of groups who saw our legitimacy as betrayal. But gradually, we built something new. Import-export businesses that were actually legal, real estate development that helped Koreatown thrive, community programs that supported immigrants like my parents had been. I painted. Minjun managed. Grace grew. And sometimes, late at night, I thought about that moment in Hanul Garden when a man stumbled in, poisoned and desperate, and I made a choice to save him. My grandmother had been right. That decision had changed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. But standing in our home, watching Minjun dance with our daughter, seeing the empire we'd built together on foundations of loyalty and love and hard-earned redemption, I knew I'd made the right choice. Sometimes the most dangerous paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. You just have to be brave enough to walk them.